Hello, welcome to my instrument critique presentation. I'm Brooke Coppinger Vogelsang, Kopog. I'm doing my presentation on the Eysenck personality inventory. Hopefully this goes pretty smoothly. So, the Eysenck personality inventory, or EPI, was created by Hans Eysenck and Sybil Eysenck. They're married. They are both psychologists. It was developed in 1964 with the main purpose of measuring two central dimensions of personality, which is extroversion and neuroticism. So Eysenck viewed, this all came from his personality theory, which he viewed as people having two personality dimensions, extroversion, which is where you're, more sociable and you want to connect with people and you kind of crave that like attention and just having like that, just being around a lot of people, you're really sociable and everything. And then the introversion is just being like, you don't want to, just want to stay home, this quarantine thing you got going on. You just want to be alone and you have limited interactions with people. And then the neuroticism, which is just being more anxious and easily stressed out in low stress situations. Your fight or flight reaction is very easily triggered. And then the stability, which is, you are able to be emotionally stable in high stress situations. It takes a lot more stimulation to activate your fight or flight, which deems you are emotionally stable. So from this assessment, it's a few personality assessments were created from it, like the Eysenck Personality Questionnaire and Eysenck Personality Profiler, EPQ and EPP. So the only difference from the EPI and the two little ones that he made is that the EPQ, it measures psychoism, like it's saying psychoism versus socialization, which that was a part of his original theory anyway. And then it has 90 questions. And then the EPP measures 21 traits of personality that are consistent with Eysenck's personality dimensions. Okay. So the structure of the EPI, it's pretty simple. Because it being a self-report instrument, Eysenck thought it would be necessary to add a lie score, which is just to measure how socially desirable individuals try to make themselves in the testing or in the personality assessment. Trying to think like, oh, how can I make myself sound better? The questions have targeted areas on how a person behaves, feels, and acts. The instructions, like I said, are pretty self-explanatory. When I looked at it, it was pretty just clear-cut and just said, it's yes or no. That's a limited answering format. The questions are really short and simple, pretty user-friendly, easy to read. Oh, it's also designed for adults and adolescents, and it contains 57 questions. So, like I said, pretty short. Okay, so when administering the EPI, so the information that I found was really scarce. I found an article that talked about how it is more preferable to have a mental health professional administer it and interpret it, or an individual trained in dealing with objective tests, just to prevent any kind of skewed results or whatever. But you can do it yourself. It takes around 20 minutes to complete, this presentation, so not that super long. And you can take it computerized or manually. And there is no time limit, which is really nice. The biggest thing I would say about the whole administering it is what it really stresses on is that it encourages, when you take this assessment takers, to answer quickly, to avoid the socially desirable answers. Just try not to think about it. They just want your first reaction. Just be like, oh, okay, yep. Okay, scoring. When we talk about scoring, like I said, the self-scoring, you can do that. It's pretty easy. There's 24 questions relating to extroversion. There is 24 questions relating to neuroticism and 9 questions for the Y score. There are a total of 3 scoring graphs, or not graphs, tables. And it's these 3, like I said right here, and then I just said that. And so you're supposed to like review your questions, and there's questions in each score table, and then if it matches up, then like, so for the extroversion score, if I have like a few questions that match up or whatever, I would put an E next to my answer, and then leave it blank if it doesn't match up. And then the same thing is for the neuroticism score table and then the Y score table. If the answers match up, like I said, then I write it down. And then you're supposed to add up the score table, so I'll add up all my E's, all my N's, and all my L's for the slide scale. So if you score 5 or higher, then that just shows that you're really trying to like make yourself look good, and your results are basically skewed. So don't do that. The next one is interpretation. So this is pretty interesting with the graph that he made for this. So this is the Eysenck personality graph. It has the scale to assess the severity of your extroversion versus introversion, and the neuroticism versus stability. And then it also gives 4 dimensions, which is the melancholic, choleric, phlegmatic, and sanguine. And then that like also provides personality traits that apply to that dimension. So if we're looking at melancholic, that's introverted, neurotic, and then choleric, extroversion, neurotic. I butchered that word so much. Phlegmatic is emotionally stable, introverted, yay. And then sanguine is extroverted, stable. And as you can see here, it hasn't really changed much. When I was looking at the graphs and everything, like it hasn't changed much at all. It's still the same. Okay. Moving on to the next one. So reliability versus validity. So when I was doing research on this instrument, I saw that there is not a lot of data made about this, and I also came to realize that it is a very, very like old, outdated personality assessment, and it basically like the EPQ and the EPP are like the newer, better versions of it. So the updated versions and stuff, and this one has not really changed much. So when I was doing this research, I noticed that it's more used for like being like a supporting like part in like research, not really as like a whole thing or a big like the main idea. And so I saw that they found an article that used the EPI to do individuals with substance use disorder, and to find correlated personality traits that showed that they could point out and be like, oh, okay, so like people with, it was like impulsivity was a really big one. So if this person's impulsive, they have a higher chance of actually doing like, the substance abuse. And it was a longitudinal study which I didn't realize, and then I was like, oh wow, that's crazy, as I started reading it more. It had 489 participants, and it was over the course of 7 years. And the assessment demonstrated how the EPI is like cross-sectional and is pretty perspective with associates with substance use disorder. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. And then I saw an article that talked about how like the best way to use the EPI is right here, assessing the relations between specific personality characteristics and a variety of psychological phenomena. So basically what I was doing research on, it's just better at like being able to like help pick out like specific personality traits that correlate with certain disorders or issues that they are doing research on. And so The next one was talking about it's the research study on a specific personality that Turner was. So this was interesting. So it talked about how there were specific personality traits that could determine if a previous offender was going to be a repeat offender. And this was also a longitudinal study, and a lot of people dropped out of it. But still, it's pretty interesting, just to think that, I wonder if these personality traits, if we test this, would kind of help figure out if this person's going to, be a repeat offender. And it showed that high neuroticism and high extrovertism equals like an impulsivity trait, and it was the same as like the previous article that I talked about, how with the substance abuse it was a predictor for the repeat offender. So the research I have done showed better validity and reliability when the EPI was in the study. So like I just previously said that. And then, so it was a small study with the repeat offender. It was a small study, and then applicants dropped out, so that sucked, and that didn't really help, increase the reliability, because from what I could tell, that from the articles that I did do information on, there just wasn't a lot demonstrating the reliability and validity of the EPI. It was just more of like played a really small part in like any research that I could find. So the strengths. So the LI score is a pretty cool and unique factor. Not all assessments have it, personality assessments have it, and it kind of helps because I feel like everybody kind of has that going into a personality test, that they're like, I kind of want to just like be like, oh no, like I don't do that all the time. And so it helps rule out, if the person's lying, which increases the authenticity of results. It's getting a better chance of getting that true score, which is very, very important for research. Like I said, it's a pretty user-friendly structure, easy format, not hard to complete the test, not hard to score the test, not hard to interpret it. It's not something like the MMPI. It's a pretty user-friendly test. And then it being a short assessment, so I thought this was a pretty interesting article that I found, was talking about how because of it being a short assessment, it explained how that users have a higher rate, it would give a higher rate of reliability because then individuals are more engaged and have like fewer delayed responses, which increases authenticity answers, because you're not just being like, I have to reread this over and over again. I'm really bored. This is really wordy. Like it's pretty easy to read, and it's not like you have to reread the question over and over again. It's just like read it, answer, and you're done. So that helps increase the authenticity of answers, which is really, really important. Okay. So with limitations, like I said, it's pretty outdated, like really outdated. Couldn't find a lot of research on it, which was really, really frustrating. But I mean, the research that I did come to find just kind of just helped me to understand that it serves more as a foundation to produce other assessments, such as like the more helpful and more popular, widely used ones like the EPQ and the EPP. Those work. I found more information on the EPQ, to be honest, but I think that without that, we have to understand that without that, the EPQ would have never happened. So it's important to do that. So another thing is that, it was really, really crappy, is that I could not find any research done, and I really mean it, I really could not find any research done on other minority groups. There was one study, and I believe it was what study was it? It was a 7-year study, with the substance use, and it was 94% of Caucasians, and then the 6% was African American. So especially in the time that we're in now, it's really important to be doing research on minority groups, LGBTQ, and maybe even lengthening it to like the elderly. I think that would be important to do. And also just like, ethnic groups as well. And although it is pretty simple and easy to use, it only measures 2 dimensions of personality, and that's not something that extrovertism and neuroticism, I mean, those are pretty big personality dimensions, but it's not gonna help a lot with determining like, certain factors probably in the research that we've been doing and everything. So I don't think it's very helpful and useful in a lot of settings. I feel like maybe it would be better in like school settings or career development, but I'll get to that at the end. But yeah, so that's why I feel that a lot of the personality assessments were produced from the EPI, because it was just like kind of like paving the way for to like, like having building blocks for that. Okay, so last slide. Implications for future practice. So I'll probably repeat myself, but I mean, I think this is what's important, the most important of all the slides. It's best to use as a supporting evidence for research. It can help in research studies by increasing validity and reliability for specific personality characteristics that they're trying to point out, correlates with whatever main idea they're having. I think that it would be very useful to use in before and after treatments. I know I read one that talked about, it was not psoriasis, it was like doing, therapy. It's the physical therapy, So doing the physical therapy before and after, and it showed that the client's introversion, I can't say it, decreased, and their introversion increased as throughout the therapy, because they were getting like more confident and feeling more better and being like more like going out and everything, and then they were more emotionally stable as well. And I think that's really important for if a client can see the results of like what they're doing, like the treatment and everything, it gives them more of an incentive to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna still continue with treatment, I'm not gonna drop out. And I think that just being able to see that, like the progress and everything, can really help boost morale and to help like more clients to complete their treatment. And then also, I thought this was kind of important to talk about, because I personally don't think that if we weren't going to do any of the next stuff that I'm going to say, then it should just be used as like history to like kind of like look up and be like, okay, so this is how it was made, how it made other assessments and everything, and it's an important building block, but it's not going to be used today. But if it was going to be used today, it would have to have a more broader personality theory, because I put that in limitations and I forgot. So it does have a narrow-minded theory, like I said. Yeah, I did talk about that. It does have a narrow-minded theory. But so it would have to have a broader personality theory that, that measures more than just 2 dimensions. Like, it would have to have a more updated version, maybe adding kind of like how the EPQ added the psychosism. And so it'd have to do something like that. And then more research studies with EPI involving minority groups would have to be a must. That should be extremely important, just to kind of be able to get to see how it does on other groups and everything. And then like our LGBT groups for sure, and then groups of color, not just Caucasian. And then I think this would be really cool. So further research, not this part, the last part. So further research on testing the validity and reliability of the EPI in other areas. So it just talked about the personality characteristics, so maybe it could be put to use in, it should be able to be put to use in other areas besides just, testing personality and substance use, and maybe try to do more with, the trauma, effects of aging, the effects that aging has on a person and their personality. So maybe be able to test like how younger people, as they get older, they might get more introverted than extroverted, and maybe increase in neuroticism. And then also I think that is important for when we apply it to different areas is like transgendered individuals like going through transition before and after. I think that would be really interesting to see if it's actually, sometimes I feel like that it might make some individuals better because they're like, oh, I'm becoming the person who I've always felt like I am and I never have been. Or it could be like more stressed out and everything, and you're more easily stressed, and you might have like, you know, more fight or flight instincts kicked in more easily. And so I did say trauma, but I want to go back to that real quick. I think that's really important to do because that's like a personal thing of mine, so I would really like to see trauma this applied to like trauma individuals, maybe like for veterans or people of like rape or sexual assault, and maybe see like maybe how exposure therapy is helping them, kind of like the before and after treatment I talked about. And then also like applying it to different settings. And so career counseling, I think this might be helpful for people to kind of see. It's kind of like testing to see like what work environment would be most helpful for you, like if you are easily stressed out or if you're not, if you're an extroverted person so you can be around a lot of people, or if you need to be like, you know, more by yourself and everything. But all in all, this was a pretty interesting project, and even though it's not the most popular personality assessment, it still is an important part of history to display that it paved the way for a lot of other personality assessments. So, yeah, thank you, and stay safe.